Welcome to Diagnosing Dx, the podcast giving diagnostics the platform it deserves. While therapeutics and devices often take centre stage, diagnostics is the engine driving precision medicine. I'm your host, David Philby, and each week we spotlight the innovators, breakthroughs, and real-world challenges shaping the future of DX. In this episode, I'm joined by Slava Akmaev, one of the earliest pioneers applying AI to diagnostics and precision medicine, and now Chief AI Officer and COO at BPGbio. We discuss how AI has evolved from scepticism in pharma to become the operational backbone of modern biotech. Slava shares how it's reshaping clinical trials, transforming diagnostic development, and what it will take to rebuild investor confidence in the space. This is one of the most insightful conversations yet on the future of AI in diagnostics. Welcome to the show, Slava. Thank you for joining. How are you?
Pretty good. Thank you, David. Happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm excited because you're our first Chief AI Officer to come on the show. And that's what everybody wants to know, what a Chief AI Officer does and what their perspective is on, are we in a bubble? Which I've heard about 20 times this week, to be honest, mostly to do with the stock market, if I'm honest. But you know, there's a lot of talk about AI and you can't get away from it. So we've got a really interesting topic to talk about today. But before we do, it would be great to get an introduction to yourself and everything you've been doing, your background, your science and the scientific leaning you've been involved in. And yeah, bring us up to speed on who is Slava.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, thank you, David, for this opportunity. As you said, I'm Chief AI Officer at BPGbio. I'm also, which is a very interesting combination, and I think it's maybe a new trend. I'm also a Chief Operating Officer at BPGbio. And we can talk a little bit about more how these two things come together. My background, I have a PhD in applied mathematics, and I've been doing life sciences for 25 years. I've started my career, if you will, back in grad school, where I was in the Department of Applied Math, and at some point, our requirement was to select an area of application, and there were a few areas that were pretty popular at the time, but I chose to go into molecular biology and started analyzing early data back in the late 90s that was coming from PCR experiments and other types of data acquisition technologies that we had at the time. And that sort of led me to develop my interest in life sciences and really start my career in drug development and diagnostics. When I graduated back in 2000, it was the time, not many people remember this anymore, but that was the time of the Human Genome Project. We just sequenced the entire human genome, and there was a lot of excitement and, you know, a lot of bubble at the time, in a way around bioinformatics and computational biology and the human genome, how many thought that we be able to solve a lot of the human biology challenges and find novel therapeutics for many untreatable at the time diseases. Not a lot of that happened, but we've made a lot of progress over early 2000s. And at the time, I was kind of making my first foray into drug development. I was this company called Genzyme, working in the drug development side, doing early research, analyzing more of a data related to the human genome sequencing. That was this sort of the time point where we started using microarrays, and I was working in a lab that collaborated with Johns Hopkins, some of the big laboratories in the university there, and we worked on this technology called SAGE, serial analysis of gene expression, that was really a prequel to next-gen sequencing. That was a really interesting time of my career. I've learned a lot. Being a mathematician, I needed that exposure to human disease, human genetics, and molecular biology in general. So I spent several years at Genzyme on drug development side, and then I had a chance to transitioned to the Genzyme's diagnostic business division called Genzyme Genetics for a few years, and that really changed my sort of perspective on life sciences, where I got to learn more about diagnostics. And at the time, we spent a lot of time developing diagnostics in carrier screening and prenatal screening for some of the rare diseases, and also started working on oncology applications as well, using next-gen sequencing, looking at early liquid biopsy diagnostics. And at the time, we were really into cancer of unknown primary test development. So all of that as a package um, led to sort of my developing interest in diagnostics, and actually having launched and contributing to 3 commercial assays at Genzyme Genetics really helped me to solidify my expertise in the area. That sort of turned into a full-blown diagnostic career later
Mm,
in the years.
mm,
Um, Yeah, so at that time, I mean, unfortunately or fortunately for many people, Genzyme was sold, and as many know, the Genzyme, the drug development part of it, went to Sanofi, and the diagnostic laboratory was acquired by LabCorp, and still is, I think, is sort of in that state here in Massachusetts with the team and the facility. And I decided at that time to really pursue opportunities in small companies and startups. I joined a computational company for about a year, and then in 2011, I met Navin Narain, and he is really the pioneer of using AI in drug development. And we got together and started thinking about how can we use AI in life sciences, not just in developing diagnostics specifically, but also understanding better human biology by using not just molecular data, but biochemistry data, all types of data sets that we could generate at the time. Um, we had significant funding from a wealthy individual that was also committed to starting this AI path in early 2010s, and this company Berg that we worked with at the time was really the pioneer of using AI in drug development.
mm,
So over the years, I spent 7 years at Berg, from late 2011 to 2019, um, and that experience alone was, I think, life changing in a way, because we really started doing artificial intelligence applications in drug discovery, and it's really interesting to remember those times when we would go to large pharma and have meetings, and we talked about how we wanted to use AI and multi-omic data to drive target discovery, precision medicine, and biomarker discovery, and the reaction at the time, because if you think about those days, AI back in early 20 teens and 2000 teens and 2000s was a really bad word. I think there was a bit of a sort of blowback from the 90s and the 80s, where people attempted to use or build artificial intelligence application, and it was way too early. It didn't really work well, and I think even in the 90s, people had really, really high expectations from artificial intelligence in general. I mean, everybody was thinking that this is going to be this artificial humanoids that will be able to act as humans and complete many of the tasks that human can do. And I think that expectation really set up AI for huge failure in the 90s, and it became a really sort of this discarded and forgotten industry for a couple of decades, if
mm.
not more.
Yeah.
um, and now we see this huge resurgence that we'll obviously talk about. But back in 2000 teens, when we first started talking about AI, the reaction in the pharma community was beyond negative, right? It was really, it's really funny to remember those times, and actually interesting to look at some of the people that had really negative reaction to what we were working on and proposing, and now look, a lot of these people are heading their AI groups, today,
Yeah.
or even, running companies that are building AI applications. So a lot has changed in the last 15 years for sure. So, my career at Berg over the 7 years was extremely fruitful. Build AI platform based on Bayesian artificial intelligence. And this is one of the methods, or if not a unique method, that allows probabilistic reasoning. And that sort of begins to approach a little bit of um, human intelligence, right? How humans think and process information. And I think Bayesian networks, in a way, or Bayesian artificial intelligence, attempts to recreate some of that reasoning processes, some of those reasoning processes that human go through based on prior knowledge, compared to your typical neural net or machine learning approaches that recognize and search for patterns and then build new information based on the patterns that have been observed. So we kind of started on that path of using Bayesian AI back in the day, and we use it even now. Um, and I think it allows us to be more accurate and discover novel information in biological data.
Mm.
And we can talk more about that, of course. Just kind of summarizing my career experience over the last 25 years. I spent 7 years at Berg, and then went to this company called Cypher Medicine, that also used artificial intelligence in a different way, using networks. And at Cypher, I developed and launched the first precision medicine test in autoimmunity called Prisma, still on the market, and I think it's doing reasonably well. It's a diagnostic based on NGS, next generation sequencing data. And then just recently this year, I came back to Berg, that is now called BPGbio, to probably, as I think about it, to complete my journey and really deliver products in the market, on the therapeutic side and diagnostic side as well.
Mm. Um, Slava, you mentioned that around 2011 you were in discussions about using AI um, in the life sciences field. That feels like a lifetime ago in terms of, because the AI boom that we're seeing now, it's only a couple of years old, right? I mean, literally, like it's now you walk down the street and everybody knows what AI is, but literally 2 years ago, people didn't even know it even existed or how they would ever use it in their lives. It's so the hockey stick of it, sort of, the engagement is just massive. In 2011, my assumption would be that if you're in discussions with investors or founders, of early stage companies, and you're talking about the introduction of AI to help support, to discover anything to do with whether it's drug discovery or whether it's, diagnostics from data. Was that sort of just, falling on deaf ears? Were people just like, "What? What are you talking about?" Like, what, was it? How much?
Yeah,
How? Do you know what I mean? Like, it feels.
yeah. And you're absolutely right, David. It's falling on deaf ears is probably the right statement here. Back in 2011, probably through 15, 16, um, we were very isolated. I mean, a few other companies started getting on this trend, right? At the time, I mean, some of the well-known, we've watched these companies start and grow, and these companies include like In Silico Medicine. I think they started off in 2014. Recursion about the same time point. We had companies focused on drug design like Atomwise and Exscientia. We had a company, Benevolent AI. We watched all these companies start off and um, raise money and kind of grow probably in the late 2000 teens. and some of them went public, and some of them are relatively successful. Some of these companies have disappeared, but you're right that in 2011 it was a you might say a crazy story, and yes, it was. If not for our founder, who was committed to funding AI at that time in the sort of, might call it, revolution or early stages of disruption of using AI in life sciences, we wouldn't be able to do it, because
Why were they
no
so committed
VC.
to it? Like based on what? What was their theory or evidence that it was the right way to go at the time?
Yeah, I think I think there was some early indications of we that we can make a difference, and I think just general belief that this is going to change the way that we do drug development,
Mm,
and also where when you work with somebody who made money in a already made money, right? And someone who's extremely successful financially, sometimes you meet people that have certain convictions and they just want to follow through,
mm,
no matter what, right? And they don't care what others think, and they just have that vision, strategy for for a decade. It's not like you're working with a VC that want to get a return in 2 3 years. This is you're working with individuals that have commitment for a decade or more, right? And
mm.
it's a different perspective.
Yeah, that's super interesting. You mentioned you've returned to Berg or BPG, and you now have a role of chief AI officer, um, and COO. What's the sort of link there then? Because that is super interesting that now somebody with the chief AI officer role and responsibility would be seen as the right fit for a COO function, right? What is the link there, and why is that so important?
Yeah, I was chief AI back in the days of Berg in 20 teens. And then when I went to Cypher, my role was chief technology officer. It sort of expanded beyond AI, looking at various tech offerings and understanding how technology and data can solve certain problems that we were working on in autoimmunity and immunology in general. Now, coming back to BPG with all of my experience of the last 25 years, I feel that I've done almost anything and everything in life sciences,
Yeah.
and I approach my thinking from a very structured, logical perspective, and that allows me to be extremely purposeful and efficient in driving product development in general, right? And right now, um, because we are using AI almost everywhere in BPG, whether it's early discovery, early research, or driving our clinical development using data-driven approaches, and whether it's patient selection or patient recruitment or data analysis and late-stage clinical trials, everything has an AI component in it. So I think it fits really well within having this tremendous expertise in data analysis and AI, but also extremely wide horizon over the entire, I would say, segment of life sciences and product development and life science, whether it's diagnostics and therapeutics, and kind of putting it all together into one function. I think it makes a lot of sense.
So the company is obviously very AI heavy and on the front foot, and is your remit and responsibility, not to specifically just talk about your role because that's not the point, but is i- are you being brought in because they want you to get AI to be the sort of golden thread that flows through every department as a way to, completely not revolutionize, but push the company forward with efficiencies and speed to data and even the answers and stuff that they're looking for? Or is it that AI is a major component, almost a department in itself that will be responsible for, you know, getting the company to a certain place? Because it almost sounds like, because that would make sense to me if you're now the COO, is this the way that AI is going? Because it's like, actually, having an AI leader as your COO means that every department is forced to modernize and be on the front foot of AI as we move through. We're basically going from speculation and, you know, obviously, it's becoming proof of concept of AI where it's going to be everywhere and we're going to know how to use it better. So is that the goal, that it's take the whole company forward using AI?
Yeah, I think that's one of the objectives, right? And traditionally, what we had here at BPG is obviously our AI driven and AI centered discovery platform
Right.
that allowed us to build the pipeline, right? And as you know, in
So
life
that's working with
sciences,
all your
especially
data that you're gathering and
exactly, and in
right.
life sciences and in drug development, early stage pipeline takes years to mature and go through preclinical trials and then human trials and whatnot. And now we're at the stage of late stage human trials, right? So these early efforts that happened in 2000 teens now are maturing into a vibrant late stage clinical development pipeline. We have a phase 2 trial in glioblastoma that is ongoing. We're about to start registrational trial for an ultra rare disease, and there are many other indications that we're looking at for late stage trials, right? So, sort of the focus of the company is shifting towards late stage development, and we are bringing AI into that development as well, just like we've done for early discovery and early work. And you know, with what happening in the industry, and not just life sciences but everywhere, with the LLMs taking huge attention, right? What we see today is just, it's not just the biological data that is going to be primed for AI, but it's also some of the components of regulatory filings. We're looking at quality systems. We're looking at all of these supporting streams that are part of clinical development potentially being disrupted by AI in the next year or so, right?
Mm.
I was just at the AI meeting in Europe, and a lot of the people from large pharma companies talked about how they are either piloting or actually using LLMs, sort of this new wave of AI over the last 2 years, to disrupt their regulatory processes. How something that was taking 6 months before now may take 2, 3 weeks just because they can use these automated processes to help them create content that is used for regulatory filing, right? Create certain documentation and streams of information that is so quick today, right? Obviously, you want to review everything, and there are people
Yeah.
that
You need
check
oversight.
quality and
Yeah.
do double, but even creating that first version of that content is
Yeah.
so quick and creates these opportunities for efficiency and productivity that we've never seen before.
100%. So if you're working on a phase 2 or phase 3 trial, huge amounts of data, right, over a long period of time, are you seeing the AI benefit there in that the speed of the actual phase of the trial can it be dramatically reduced because of the ability to extract, assess data and then, produce, conclusions? Or is it the fact that you can reduce the cost to run that trial because of, the less manpower, less resources needed because AI can handle, or is it both?
I think it's a very interesting topic because it's a highly unmet need in the pharma industry to shorten and create more, I guess, optimization around clinical development. This is the longest part, the most expensive part of the development process that every pharma is challenged with, right? And futuristically, right, where a lot of us want to see it in the in the near or midterm future is we don't need to do human trials anymore, right? We have models and AI driven, I would say, virtual trials, right, where we can test potential compounds through digital platforms, and we don't even need to go into real human or animal to understand safety and toxicity and efficacy of a potential therapeutic. We're not there yet, right?
Yep.
And I don't know when we're going to be there. It's hard to predict, even though we and some other companies are working on it on a daily basis. But that's the ultimate goal, right? Where we are today, as I see clinical development being disrupted by the new wave of AI, is that we can use AI in understanding our patient population. We can use AI in bringing efficiencies to patient recruitment, finding the right patients,
Mm.
understanding subpopulations, understanding who are these patients that have better likelihood to responding to our investigational compound, driving patient recruitment, making it go faster, and completing trials within shorter timelines. I think that is all reality today, right? In addition to that, what you mentioned is bringing efficiencies to regulatory filing and components. I think it's reality today as well. We're using more and more AI in driving that process, and that may cut months, if not sometimes maybe even years from this whole sort of clinical development part of the drug development process.
Can
But
it do that
also,
now, Slava, or like where are we now in terms of the efficiencies of maybe a
it's happening. It's happening. I don't know if someone is already committed to doing it today, but pharma companies are piloting tools and applications that allow that to go faster. But also, I was in DC a few weeks ago in an FDA meeting, and Commissioner McCary was talking about some of the priorities at the FDA, and one of the priorities is use of AI to drive the regulatory review process. And I think we
on
should
the FDA
expect that
side?
at the FDA side, and
Yeah.
I think we should expect that some of these processes are going to be automated by AI, right? And hopefully it'll bring efficiency and shorter timelines for into the FDA review process.
Hmm. So how does it relate to where do you see it in precision medicine and diagnostics, and what we're seeing of the efficiencies and the improvements with AI in that part of the industry?
Yeah, I think in diagnostics, it's still sort of very interesting area because a lot of the diagnostic development usually happens in molecular data, right?
Yeah.
And when you think about a new assay with a particular application, you typically collect a large data set from patients affected with that condition, and then you analyze it, whether it's next-gen sequencing or maybe it's proteomics or other types of high-throughput data sets. Um, I think a lot of the players in the space, in academia and the industry, explore these new AI models that we call foundational models. These are types of approaches that use large, by 5-year, 10-year standards, extremely large data sets where we're talking about potentially millions of data points, whether it's single cell sequencing or other types of data, and they build models that so-called foundational models that try to capture basic connectivity within the data between features that are measured in the data across multiple millions of data points, right? And then you can fine-tune these models to create or answer specific questions with potentially smaller data sets. So this is one of the developments that have been happening over the last 2 years, that is relatively new in the space. And that may or may not materialize as something that will create a faster pathway for diagnostic development. We don't know that yet. We need to probably see and understand how this is going to work out. But that's sort of the research side of things, where I see diagnostics can be disrupted with language-based models is in the same way as it's happening with drug development, where people are going to be using LLMs to drive their regulatory submission applications, to drive reimbursement applications, and creating that content that will help diagnostic companies to have conversations with MolDX and CMS and private insurers as well in the United States, and the same agencies in Europe.
I mean, you mentioned reimbursement and coverage, right? Which obviously in diagnostics plays such a huge part of the industry, and can be ultimately the knife edge of a win and losing company or product. How do you see AI playing a part let's call it a single product, novel breakthrough diagnostic, commercialized through an LDT, but ultimately trying to gain reimbursement to become that sort of long-term stability and growth company? Where do you see AI playing the part in the ability to gain coverage for a company at an early stage?
Yeah, that's a great question. And as we all know in diagnostics, the most challenging part of developing a diagnostic is not really actual development. It's getting paid.
Right.
We all understand that really well. I think the new wave of AI can help in multiple ways, but the most important part to me is that we're beginning to transition to this real world data approaches for clinical efficacy, clinical utility arguments, or papers and studies. And I think if we are successful in analyzing sort of more and more available EHR data, specifically in the United States, where you can use AI to extract patient information from anonymized, de-identified EHR data and use that data as your control arms for your diagnostic product studies, I think that could expedite a lot of the reimbursement conversations. And that also affects health economic story as well, because that's a huge part of the reimbursement package. And building these studies quickly using external data that is already available, you just
Hmm.
need to extract it and annotate by potentially using AI, and create these comparators of where you use the diagnostic versus where you don't use the standard of care without the diagnostic, and making the argument that the diagnostic changes patient outcomes and also creates a positive health economic story for coverage, is extremely beneficial, and potentially can be disrupted with the new wave of AI that we're experiencing right now.
That's interesting. So the ability to collect and draw on a significant increase in the data and evidence from different sources, bring it all together, and
Yeah,
then ultimately make trials more efficient and cheaper to run. Because ultimately, actually, one of the biggest bottlenecks in the industry right now is when early stage companies can't raise money, what's actually being stopped is clinical trials,
absolutely.
right? And where any cash they do have is being pumped into the LDT commercialization, to try and generate revenue. So if there is improvements in diagnostic trials that can then end up in 510(k) PMA approvals, etc., that's really interesting. That we're really focused on building more robust reimbursement and health economic stories that payers buy into.
Yeah, and I think that will also bring back investors into diagnostics. I mean, if you look at the
Yeah.
landscape today, in simple terms, it's death, right? I think well-established large diagnostic companies have recovered, um, by and large, from the 2021 crash. You look at LabCorp and Quest; they're doing really well.
Yep.
Same for large oncology testing companies,
Yeah.
Guardant and Natera and others. But if you sort of explore the landscape of startups and small companies, innovative companies, or the next generation of innovation in diagnostics, there's nothing, right? The fund, as far as I mean, obviously I don't know everything, but what I can see from where I am, there are no small companies funded that develop diagnostic assets. And when I talk to VCs, some of my colleagues and friends, they only invest in their portfolio companies because they're kind of trying to keep them alive for the time being,
Yeah.
where funding is very scarce. But I think use of AI and this whole idea that diagnostic development and reimbursement can be much more efficient and less capital intensive will probably resonate eventually, and funding will flow back into innovation and small or startup diagnostic companies that have ideas about disrupting certain areas of human disease.
Yeah, we sort of need a few wins, don't we, to return sort of
Yeah.
investor confidence in, late stage wins, or even, if we can get a few, because there is now, a collection of um, AI heavy diagnostics companies that are probably reaching around sort of Series B stage and, becoming big companies in their own right. But ultimately, we need to see what happens to those companies and if they, can prove to be truly disruptive, and whether that means they IPO or whether that, whether they get acquired before they need to do that. So I think, I mean, it's interesting as well because we talk to a lot of early stage diagnostics companies that are heavy AI, and
Hmm.
this is really interesting. So I've been working on a couple of founding engineer roles for AI heavy diagnostics and precision medicine companies recently, and I didn't really I got told this by a founder probably 2 months ago, and when he said it to me, I was a little bit surprised. Um, but I actually had it directly happen to me this week. I reached out to a candidate who is an AI engineer, AI/ML engineer, and we are having to source candidates from tech companies trying to bring them into precision medicine. Now, there is a benefit there in that actually a lot of these love the purpose of the company rather than just producing another AI app or something. They're like, oh wow, this is precision medicine, it's oncology, it's whatever it is, and they're like, that'd be fascinating to use my technical experience as a founding engineer to do that. And then you explain the company to them, and they go, "This sounds like that sounds like the thing that Elizabeth Holmes did." And
Yeah.
I was like, sorry. I was like, well, let's clarify on what Elizabeth Holmes actually did. But investors still say that to
Yeah.
this day on liquid biopsy, capillary blood companies and stuff like this. So, the precision medicine actually feels like one of the best areas to utilize AI as a way, this could revolutionize the industry and ultimately how early we detect and therefore treat all types of diseases.
Yeah.
It's prime for AI, but we still, without the capital to pursue what's being built, that's, something's got to break, and maybe it'll take a while, or maybe we need a win or two before investors start going, oh,
Yeah.
that's super interesting what they've done. Where's the next AI precision medicine company? Let's flood in. Do you know what I mean? It feels like we're
Yeah.
missing that win.
Yeah, no, David, I completely agree with you. I mean, the point that you made about precision medicine and diagnostics in general, you can't treat a disease if you cannot, first of all, diagnose it correctly. And we're still struggling with many conditions that take years to diagnose. And this is taking my experience from autoimmunity immunology over the last 5 years. There's so many autoimmune diseases that are so hard to diagnose because there isn't a diagnostic that's going to tell you yes or no. We kind of got really well with finding genetic conditions, right? Something that is driven by germline genetic mutation. We can find it. We can do whole genome sequencing and identify those mutations. But when you're looking at something that is more dynamic, that is happening through the course of someone's life experience, whether it's environmental factors or other effects driving it, it's really difficult to diagnose some of those conditions, right? Like lupus, for example, or a number of other autoimmune conditions that go misdiagnosed for years. We need better diagnostics to find those patients and put them on the right medication. But now, if we're talking about the right medication, that's where precision medicine comes in. And in oncology and autoimmunity and other conditions, we still, on large, treat patients on the sort of trial and error approach, right? Here's a medication. You have this specific condition. Why don't you try it? See if it works for you. You try it for 2, 3, 6 months, and patients experience side effects. There's some of their disease physiology may change as well. They progress into a different state. We need precision medicine, not just in oncology, but in other conditions, chronic diseases as well. And that's been going really, really slowly. And I hope that with AI, we can be better. And there are many factors that sort of affect that development, reimbursement being the biggest one of them.
Mm.
But also medical community, adoption of precision medicine methodology in general, adoption of precision medicine philosophy has to probably go a little faster. And I hope that with AI, we're not just able to analyze molecular data, but we can maybe do a better job at analyzing patient clinical experience or having demographic basic laboratory testing, patient medical history over the last few years driving some of those outcomes as well. But as
Mm.
you talk about, Theranos and that experience, I agree with you. We need a win. We need someone who's going to be bold at developing a new methodology and taking it to the market, with a different approach to quality and showing the world that it can actually work. And I know a few companies that are working on a technology that can bring that type of process back in the conversation. And I
Mm.
think eventually, whether it's going to happen this year or the next 2 years, someone will do it and we'll experience another boom in the space.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think we're that far away. I don't feel that far away from a
Yeah,
few really
yeah.
exciting stories that really change the outlook on this reputation that the industry is still trying to shake off. Slava, let's talk a little bit more objectively. What's your perspective on how AI is perceived and sort of utilized objectively at the moment? Because it's just everywhere. The stock market seems to be booming based on an AI driven bubble, for want of a better term.
Yeah.
You know, what as someone who's been in it as long as you have and is still driving that in a very specific field with a specific purpose, what's your objective opinion on how AI is being utilized and how it's now everywhere?
Yeah, I think what we mostly talk about it now is the LLMs, right? It's the large language models. There are a number of them available today, and the number of applications keeps growing every day.
Yeah,
But I think what is happening also is that, and it happens every time with the new technology, right? There's a lot of hype at the beginning, and we think that we're gonna be solving every problem with that tech. But as we begin to experience and work with it, we understand its limitations. We understand where we should apply it for best outcome, and where maybe it's not that great. And I think a lot of people get it today that, if you used LLM, it may be good at certain things. And we talked about regulatory, compiling documents, putting things together, creating a first draft that then experts can review and modify. But we also begin to understand that LLMs have limitations, and even humans, I find myself being more and more trained that I can even recognize what's been written by LLM versus by a human being, and it's not that
yeah.
difficult,
It's
turns
not
out.
that. Yeah, I'm getting
Yeah.
used to it now as
And
well. Yeah,
you can probably talk to every teacher in middle and high school. They can tell you right away, oh, this student used GPT versus writing it themselves, right? I think when you talk about 12-year-old writing, it's pretty obvious when it's a 12-year-old wrote it versus they used one of these LLM applications. Um, so I think LLMs are. I think it was really smart. Someone came up with this idea of actually renaming AI to AGI, right? We talked about 2000s and the 90s. We used to think of AI as this, this artificial human that is just basically going to do everything that humans can do and think in the same way. But now someone came up with this great idea that, well, our AI today is not that AI. When you're talking about humans or replicating humans, that we're gonna call it AGI, right? That we're not there yet, but this AI that we have today is a different type of AI. It can analyze language, it can create documents, it can put things together in the way that it's learned from all of the training data, and to a certain degree it's going to transform some of the um, activities that we have in life sciences and other industries. But I think today, the you probably agree with that as well, the expectation of the stock market is way overhyped. I don't think we're going to be doing everything soon enough with these current LLM models. And one of the things, we know that it's not AGI already because that's how they define it, right? But even to approach reasoning and sort of some of the human intelligence, we're so far away,
Yeah.
so far away. And even, I mean, if you look at biology and biological data, it's one thing to analyze language and analyze data that is extremely static and 100% precise. And what I mean by that is that if you have a sentence, that sentence is very clear. It's not like you're missing half of the words in the sentence, or some of the words are in a different language. Like you have very well defined data sets to train on. In biology, when we look at molecular data, the data sets are not like that, right?
Hmm.
You're basically, if you use the LLM example, you're trying to train your language model on a data set that, as I said, half of the words are missing, half of the words are scrambled completely, and then also your data set evolves in time. It's not a static data set.
Yeah.
Your books and chapters and papers and everything that you're trying to train on, today it's one thing and then tomorrow it's completely different, or even in a minute, right? So we don't really understand how to deal with the dynamics in AI of today yet, and that's what we need to figure out to model systems like human biology.
Interesting. Still a long way to go.
Yeah, I
Fascinating.
think so. Yeah, but
It,
having said that, one positive things that is happening is that there's more and more investment into AI, which means that more research and more development will be done because there's capital to do it. We're at BPG have a very different approach to artificial intelligence. We, as I said, we use Bayesian AI that is well set up for including temporal components in modeling biological systems, and also well set up of dealing with molecular data that oftentimes is extremely noisy. So we're putting more efforts into developing our AI approach, and I think at some point all of these attempts and methodologies are going to link into one, whatever you call it, Uber AI or something like that, that may begin to approach reasoning and decision making.
it's absolutely fascinating, Slava, talking to you. Someone who's at the forefront of life sciences and AI into life sciences, and how that's now become an operational asset. Um, it's just amazing. And also with how it can impact diagnostics beyond just assessment of molecular data, and actually the process of everything that we're doing. Again, almost the operational side of regulatory reimbursement and so forth, and the ability to bring quality products through to market quicker and then get them covered, and therefore boost the industry. Just fascinating, Slava. I really appreciate you coming on to talk about the topic today. And yeah, I almost want to sort of speak to you again in 12 months' time and go, where are we now?
Yeah,
Because
I
it would just be so different again, wouldn't it? The landscape is,
absolutely, yeah, yeah. It
yeah,
moves so fast, and that's why this area is so exciting because we're moving so fast, right?
yeah, incredible. Well, Slava, thank you so much for your time and your insights. And great to talk to you again.
Thank you, David. Thanks for having me.